Welcome to the solution video for the Soda Machine Challenge. Let's go to Visual Studio and we'll open up our class library first and dive right back into the logic section. Because this is where we're going to work to call these things in order to, on our front end, use just the user portions. Okay, so remember this is focusing just on what the user is going to do. Before we can use those, we've got to actually create our console application. So let's right click up on the solution and say add new project. We're going to choose core app.net core. I'm sorry, console app.net core. We're going to name this something better. So let's call this Soda Machine Console UI. Hit create. And now there's our console application. Now, one of the things that the bonus wanted us to do, which we're going to do right away because it doesn't make sense to do it and then undo it or do it and change it. But the bonus wanted us to use dependency injection, which seems on the surface very, very simple because .NET Core has baked in dependency injection, but it's not exposed in the console. Now it's there. It's under the covers. It's just not out in front like it is with ASP.NET Core, where it's already set up and configured for us. Now let's start by getting all of our NuGet packages installed right away. So we're going to right click on, well, first let's set up our project to be the startup project. Okay, now let's set up our NuGet packages. So right click on dependencies and say manage NuGet packages. And we'll go, there's none installed right now. So let's go to browse and search for Microsoft.extensions.configuration. Now there's a few here to install. So let's go through them. First is Microsoft.extensions.configuration. Install that and accept. The next is Microsoft.extensions.configuration.abstractions. So install that. And then we want Microsoft.extensions.configuration.file-extensions. And we also want Microsoft.extensions.configuration.json. And finally, we want to change this to extensions.dependency injection. And install Microsoft.extensions.dependency injection. Now, I often hear people give me a little bit of pushback here and say, man, you're installing a lot. And it's not in .NET Core itself, but if you want it and if you need it, then you just ask for it. The benefit there is we only get the things we need. When we don't need them, we don't ask for them. So this is actually a very efficient process, not an inefficient. So don't look at the number of packages and say that's a bad thing. Look at this and say, you know what, there's probably 200 packages I could install that were probably part of a .NET framework, but since I don't need all 200, I just need these 5, then that's all I'm going to use. So let's talk through what these are. Well, dependency injection is pretty self-explanatory. When I say that, I don't mean that it's kind of obvious because you're not born with this knowledge. But what I'm saying is that's for dependency injection. So we want to use dependency injection in .NET Core. Therefore, we have to enable dependency injection through the NuGet package. These 4 up here all kind of work together. And what they do is actually these 3, configuration, file extensions, and JSON. This allows us to talk to appsettings.json, which is the standard JSON file for configuration. Now, we could talk to other JSON files as well, but that's the only one we're going to enable right now. There's a different NuGet package for example, Key Vault. We could enable that and allow our application to also talk to Key Vault. But for right now, we're just going to do JSON configuration. So file extensions allows us to talk to files, and then JSON allows us to read JSON configuration files. And configuration is the base for all working with the configuration system. Now, abstractions gives us some additional abilities on the reading side. This is where you can ask for an I configuration and then read from that configuration and use it. And so we'll do that in a bit. So those are the NuGet packages we need. So now we're set up with that. Next, let's add a dependency. So right click again, add a reference, and we refer to our library. That way we can talk to the Soto machine and also put this information, put the iSoto machine logic and iData access into our dependency injection. Speaking of dependency injection, let's get that set up. So let's start by adding a couple using statements using Microsoft.extensions.configuration and using Microsoft.extensions.dependency injection. Now, inside of our namespace, but outside of class, we're going to add a private static iService provider. And this is going to be called, let's call this service provider. It's fine. Like so. Whoops, I put it in the wrong spot. That's why it's yelling at me. It's inside class, but outside of main. There we go. So now it's not yelling at me because you can't put things outside of a class. You have to have them inside of a class. All right, so now let's create a method down here. We'll call it private static void register services. And this just keeps things nice and clean to have a method that registers services. We can say var collection equals new service collection. Then we're going to have an I configuration called config equals new configuration builder, not binder, builder. And we're going to say on the new line, just to make it a little easier to read, add JSON file. This is where we get that JSON file ability. And we'll say app settings.json, which we don't have yet, but we're going to add this. And yes, it's optional. And yes, reload on change. So if the file's not there, no worries, we'll skip over it. But if it is there and there's a change, it's going to reload this file. And then finally .build. Okay, that's going to build a configuration for us. Now before we go on, let's add that appsettings.json file. Right click on the project and say add new item. text file data access. So what that means is whenever you ask for an iData access, you'll get back a text file data access. Now those names don't match, and that's okay. The reason I did it that way is because down the road, you may ask for iData access and get back a SQL data access instead of a text file data access. Now we also want to add a collection, add transient, an iSoda machine logic, control dot to add our using statement, and then soda machine logic, like so. And that will add this soda machine logic. Notice that soda machine logic asks for an iData access. Well, since we've registered that in dependency injection will handle populating that with a text file data access class. In text file data access, we ask for an iConfiguration. Well, again, dependency injection will handle that by passing in this instance that we created here. Whenever we ask for an iConfiguration, it's going to pass in that singleton that we created. So we should be just about set for this. Only a couple things left to do. First of all, on appsettings.json, I'm pretty sure I forgot to change the copy to output directory to be copy if newer. That will copy the appsettings.json file to the directory. Next, let's go to tests. And in tests, have these four values: coins, soda, machine info, and user credit. So let's close all but this. Yes, save that. And then we're going to open up appsettings.json, create a text file storage. So text file storage. And that's going to be an object. And inside here, we're going to have coins, soda, machine info, and user credit. Coins, soda, machine info, and user credit. And let's see what those values are going to be. They're all strings. Okay, so we have the get value. We're asking for strings for each of those. Okay, so these are the four files where we're getting data from. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to create four files in our console UI. And this is more for demo purposes than anything else, but it would work in production as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to create one called coins.txt. So we're going to look for a text file. We will name it coins.txt. There's our coins file. And we'll say that it is coins.txt. We'll make sure that coins file has the properties .txt. We'll set that to also be copy always. And then we need the machine info. So new item, machineinfo.txt. Set that to be copy always. And the last one here is user credit. User credit.txt. And we'll set that to be copy always. Now let's look at what should be in these files. Well, let's actually put them in here first. soda.txt, machineinfo.txt, and finally user credit.txt. Now, this is great for development because it allows us to refresh our environment all the time whenever we rebuild the application, but it's not good for production. It could be used for production, but here's the danger. Every time you deploy this application, if you're not careful, you will overwrite the entire inventory, amount taken in, everything from your Soda machine. That's probably not ideal. Instead, what you want to do is deploy these files if they don't exist. But if they do exist, you leave them alone. The only time that causes a problem is if you made a change where the structure of the text file would be different. And then you have to figure something out for an upgrade path. But for this is great for testing. And then production, all you need to do is change these paths. That is something you do in the build process. Either that, or you just don't deploy those files if they already exist. And that's easy enough to do as well. But just keep a note of that. Then, of course, you don't want to, every time you have a new version, you don't want it to wipe out your inventory of your Soda machine. All right, let's look at our text file data access. And let's look at what we're going to do for reading these different files. So this one, we're reading the coins. And we're going to split the coin on comma, so it's comma separated. And we have name and then amount, the number of that item. All right, so it'd be quarter, and then the number is 0.25 or 0.25. Okay, and then we have a list of quarters, we have a list of dimes, and a list of is our change for us. Now, once we've got it in, we can test various scenarios like having not enough change, but don't forget we do have the unit testing, which is all working, and it's all verifying these different values in different scenarios. So you don't have to test it except in how it's going to reflect in the user interface. Okay, so there is the coins. Now let's go back to the text file data access and look at how we deal with the machine info. So we have coin inventory, machine info. Here we go. So we read all lines, and then we have 3 lines. Lines 0, 1, and 2. Line 0, the first line, is soda price. Line 1 is cash on hand. And then total income. So the first one is going to be our soda price. So that's machine info here. So that's going to be 0. Let's make it easy, 0.60. There's our 65. That's our amount of money. That's how much it costs to buy a soda. This is how much money we have on hand, and this is how much total the machine has made. both 0 because we're going to start off with nothing in the machine as far as no income. All right, so the machine info is complete. Now let's look at sodas. Okay, so retrieve sodas. Again, we're going to comma separated. It's going to be the soda machine or soda name and then the slot occupied. And in our mock data access, we said Coke in slot 1, Diet Coke in slot 2, and Sprite in slot 3. Sounds good to me. Coke in slot 1. So we have, 6 Cokes there. Diet Coke in slot 2. Nope, no spaces. And then Sprite in slot 3. Like so. All right. And again, how much is there? Not a big deal. We just want something in there. All right. The last thing we have to do is user credit. And I believe that user credit we can leave alone, but let's just check it out to be sure. So down here we should have some user credit. And user credit, what it's going to do is it says retrieve user credits. So let's go there. And retrieve user credits is going to read all the lines. It's going to split the lines and say that there's a key and a decimal value. So the key is going to be the user ID, and the decimal value is how much money that user has deposited. That can start off as an empty file. So we can close out of this. We can close out of the mock data access. We can close out of user credit, which can remain blank. And now we have our 4 text files we can then use. So that's all we need for appsettings.json. Let's close that out. Now we can actually start doing something. Let's start off by having a menu that pops up where we give the user some options of what they can do. Let's start off by having a string value that is user selection. And we'll start off with an empty string. And we're going to have a while loop. Oh, actually, not a do loop. So do while user selection is not equal to 9. Okay? So as long as the user selection is not 9, then keep looping through. But once the user says 9, then we're going to have a thanks, have a nice day. And then we'll have one more that says press return to quit. And then we'll have our console read line like so. Now that was a custom snippet, that's CR, but it's console.readline. All right. I use my custom snippet I created. If you want to know how to do that, there is a video on custom snippets you can create, and that's a handy little one that I created to do console read line, since we have a console write line but not a console read line. All right, so up here before the do loop, we're going to say, welcome to our soda machine. That sounds good. And then down here in the do loop, let's put a menu. Now, we could break this apart into a private method. I don't think we're going to go that far here. Yeah, we are. Private static void show menu. So this will be console write line. Please make a selection from the following options. And then we're going to say one, whoops, in quotes. One is going to be show soda price. And that's just the price of any soda. Then we're going to have 2 be list soda options. That'd be what soda is available for us. 3 is going to be show amount deposited. That's how much money you've put in the machine. And then 4, let's make this deposit money. Five is going to be cancel transaction. That's what's going to return the money to you. And then we're going to say 6. 6 is going to be request soda. That's where you actually ask for a specific soda. Okay? And then we'll have console write line. We'll have 9 be close out transaction. Okay, something like that. Close machine. Okay. That's what's going to, let's spell it right. That's where it's going to, essentially close out the machine. But that's the user selection 9, where it says, thanks, have a nice day, press return to quit, and then you're done the application. Okay, and I skipped all the way down to 9 here for a couple reasons. One, just in case we were going to do a numeric parse on this, which we're not, but in case we were, I didn't want to choose 0 because that's the default. If you do a try parse and it fails, it's going to return 0. So I didn't want to have that be the exit. And second, you just give yourself a little bit of space. You don't have close in the middle of the list. So if you add another option, it'd be 7, not this be 7 and the other option be 8. Okay, so that way, if users used to hitting a number to close the machine, and all of a sudden it does something different, that would be a problem. So that's why I chose 9 and skipped 7 and 8. All right, so now user to type out show soda price, which is a pain for the user, and it also means they're going to get that wrong. They're going to mistype it. They're going to say shoe, SHOOW, soda price, and it's not going to work. So give them numbers that the user has a whole lot less opportunity to mess that up. They can still do it, but there's less of an opportunity there. So this way we have 1, 2. Let's break this apart. There we go. Notice there's this little thing up here. This little divider icon. It's kind of hard to see. Let's see if we can zoom in here. There we go. So there's a little divider icon here. If you click and drag this, what it's going to do is going to split your existing file into 2 pieces. So now I can drag this down, and I can come down on the bottom one and show my list. So there's the 2 through 9. And then up here at the top, I can independently scroll and say list soda options. And I'll just copy and paste. It just seems so much easier. There's 3. There's 4. There's 5. There's 6. And there is 9. Okay? And now when you're done with it, what you can do is drag to the top, and it's gone. All right? So now we have 1 through 9, excluding 7 and 8, which we're not actually using. Now we have these cases set up. We can do something interesting. So default break, that's going to be just fine. Because whatever else they put, if it's not 9, what it's going to do is go back to the top. Now at the end of this, I do want to have a console.clear, which is going to clear the screen of everything and start over at the top, which is, so that's going to be up here. And why are we missing? We're missing something up here. We're missing user selection equals show menu. I don't know where that went. Interesting. Must have wiped that out accidentally at some point. So we're going to show the menu again. So that's going to be what we're going to start over with if they don't select something. So with that, now we can loop through every time. If they don't do anything, it's going to show the menu over and over and over again until they figure it out. Now, if I say 9, we don't actually have to do anything either, which we could just have a break here. And I kind of like that, where it just does nothing. Or we could even take this case out entirely, which makes it look like a mistake. And I don't want it to be a mistake or make it seem like it's a mistake. I want it to be clear, don't do anything. In fact, I would probably put in here, don't do anything, allow this to fall through. Not to fall through, that's special switch speak for don't have a break here and go to the next statement. We don't want to do that. To go to the while, which will close the loop or exit the loop. All right. So in fact, I'm going to do the same thing down here, which makes it very, very clear that default and 9 are the same thing. Actually, go to the while, which will restart the loop. Okay, so a little different. So 9 is going to exit the loop, but anything other than 9 goes back to the top and starts over. So they type test in, not a problem. It's not going to break. It's just going to start over. And hopefully they get the idea that they're doing something wrong. All right, so at this point, we should be all set. Let's run this and make sure it does actually run the menu. Not that it's going to do anything else, but it should at least run the So that's the show soda price, list the soda, and all the rest, not the administrative actions like clear out the machine or show us how much the machine has made or deposit coins or as in like, restock the coins or restock the soda. We're not going to do any of that in this app. We're just doing the user side of things. Okay. Now, also in our primary challenge, we had to create the text files with default data. Okay. We did all those. And we also created the menu system for the user. So that's this menu system right here that shows the menu and then allows us, we actually probably went a little farther than we needed to, but we show the what to do with that. So now we're all ready for part 2, which will be to actually make methods inside here for each of these steps. Now the bonus challenge, which we implemented right in stream, so we didn't separate the two out, was to implement dependency injection and eye configuration. So we did that when we did this method right down here, register services, where we register the services, we set up the eye configuration, we added the eye configuration and our eye data access and soda machine logic. And we did the build. And so now we have the service provider, which we can use to make calls. Now you may ask, yes, but how do we actually use this? Well, whenever we need something, we're going to use this underscore service provider. So let's just do an example here just to show you. We're going to say, let's say we need the soda machine info. Okay, soda machine itself, like the soda machine logic. We would say equals soda or service provider dot get service. We're going to ask for an I soda machine logic. That's it. And now we've asked dependency injection for an I soda machine logic, which what it will do is right down here, it's going to say, okay, that's a soda machine logic class. And that class asks for an I data access. So in order to instantiate this, I have to have an I data access. And it's going to say, oh, I got one of those. That's the text file data access. That's what I need to instantiate. It goes to instantiate that and says, well, actually, before I can instantiate that, I need an I configuration. And it comes back over here and says, oh, no problem. I have one of those. I'll pass that in. It's already configured. So it passes that in as to the constructor of text file data access, creates an instance of that, which it then returns to the instance of soda machine logic and the constructor. It's going to pass the newly created text file data access instance to this class to instantiate that. It's going to take that instance and it's going to return it to this variable. So that's what dependency injection does. It's going to go all the way down the line and get all those dependencies it needs, not just the top level one. It's going to go all the way down the chain, get all the information, and then return it all the way back through to instantiate all the different values. And the end result is a class that has everything set up for you when you need it. Now, we don't need this right now. We'll need this in a little bit when we start doing our method calls. That's okay. We'll do that in our next lesson. But I did want to show you that yes, dependency injection is set up and it's all ready to go. And we'll do that in the methods we put in this do loop. Okay, so that is the Soda Machine Console Challenge, Part 1. This is Part 1 of 2. We'll do the second half of the console app in the next weekly challenge. I didn't want to do it all in one because when I started getting into it, I realized let's get long enough. We don't need to have this marathon session every week. And so I broke it apart in what I thought was a logical place. So next week we'll do the second half. If you want to get a jump on that, you could. But just make sure there's a few things we're going to want to do as far as our bonus challenge that we'll need to tackle as well. So give it a shot if you want to get a little jump start. But otherwise, come on back next week for part 2 of this. All right. So thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.